Herschel damn Walker. The election is today. State of Georgia, US Senate runoff. Well, the bigots who are voting for Herschel Walker, they are literally wearing outfits, hats, shirts that say, "Run, Herschel, run." Here's some of it.
Herschel represents the state I want to live in, the way I want to live my life, his values, and I really believe he will represent Georgians, not represent Joe Biden.
Well, here's the thing. It's such a double standard, and that's what Democrats do. They're complaining about him forcing someone to get an abortion, but they're pro-choice. So it makes no sense. And that's what Democrats do. They like to spin things just to make it look evil or what it is. I don't know if he did it or not. You know, the bottom line is he's the right choice.
You see the hypocrisy here. According to those who are still supporting Herschel Walker, the Democrats are the ones who are wrong for calling out the hypocrisy of Herschel Walker as it relates to basically everything. Now remember, I've said this before. In order to keep themselves from having to challenge their own values, what they will do is move the moral compass so they never have to actually hold anyone accountable to any behavioral standard. This is a sad state of affairs for Republicans. You all have gone from the Black Republican Colin Powell at one time to Herschel Walker, all right? Okay, now I have a whole lot of lies to go through because Herschel did a whole lot of talking. Let me first start with this one because as you may know, Herschel Walker actually is not a resident of Georgia. He committed 2 crimes, one in Georgia, another one in Texas. Let me highlight the ways. Here it is.
I was sitting in my home in Texas, and I was seeing what was going on in this country.
But during a campaign rally just hours ago, Walker claimed that he's always been a Georgia resident.
I represent the great people of Georgia. I've lived here my whole life.
Walker has been under fire over this already, fending off questions about his residency after CNN's K-File reported that Walker was getting a Texas tax break intended for a primary residence.
Okay, let's go ahead and count the ways here. So Herschel Walker said in one context, he was sitting at his home in Texas when he got the call to run for the US Senate in Georgia. And then he tells another crowd, "I've lived in Georgia my entire life." That's called a pathological liar. Something that his campaign executive has already said. The man is a pathological liar. Now, here's another dynamic. You see, Herschel Walker should actually be under criminal investigation by both the state of Texas and the state of Georgia. Why is that? Because he claimed homestead exemption tax in the state of Texas 2 years in a row. Both of those years were after he announced he was running for the US Senate. Remember, what does homestead exemption mean? It means you're going to receive a tax break for the home you own. By law, you can only take this tax break at your primary residential location. Texas law prohibits this under their criminal code, which means if you took the exemption, that's where you live. The state of Georgia has a very similar law. In addition to that, once Herschel Walker decided to register in the state of Georgia, however, by maintaining his residency in Texas, he committed another crime in the state he's running for Senate in. Has anyone put him under criminal investigation? No. Has he had to even answer these questions in a thoughtful conversation or interview? No. As a matter of fact, his campaign has a new rule now. Anyone who is a member of the press cannot get within 20 feet of Herschel Walker. Why is that? Because Herschel may actually try to answer a question. That is why. Let me give you some background. Polling suggests, all right? Polling suggests that Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock, dear friend of mine, heads into this runoff with a slight advantage over Herschel Walker, the Republican nominee. Senator Warnock leads by 1.9 percentage points in the 538 aggregate of publicly available polls and by nearly 4 points in the Real Clear Politics polling average. In several surveys, Senator Warnock's support has topped the crucial 50% mark. while no recent poll shows Herschel Walker has ever topped over 50%. Do not buy into those numbers too much. As I've continued to say, polls are not predictions, and all of the polling data is within the margin of error. So if the margin of error is 3.9% to 4.8%, and that is the difference between the two, that means basically you could throw the poll away. That's what it means. It is a toss-up. Nobody can claim clear victory. There's more. Herschel Walker doesn't know what he's actually running for. Here's a direct quote. Herschel Walker said, and I quote, "They're not less motivated because they know right now that the House," he said the House, not the Senate, "that the House will be even. So they don't want to understand what is happening right now." He said Saturday about Georgia voters. He goes on to say, you get the House, you get the committees, you get all the committees even. They just stall things within there. Ladies and gentlemen, that is verbatim. Some people thought when I first made that statement that somehow I was, editing the statement. No, that is his actual statement. The man thinks he's running for the House of Representatives. He actually said in another interview that the late John Lewis was a US Senator. The man is the Republican nominee for the US Senate and could actually win today. There's more. In a September interview with black media outlet Rolling Out, where I happen to be the president of, Walker said that while some people only talk about him in reference to his past as a football star, he says, "I've been very fortunate in the business world. I've been very fortunate in the military career, that I was doing a lot of things in the military." Ladies and gentlemen, the journalist who did that interview is a dear friend of mine. She works for Rolling Out magazine. The man said what he said. Here's the fact. The fact is Walker has never served in the US military. Rather, he has worked as a paid spokesman for a for-profit company that runs a mental health program for service members and veterans. While Walker has visited numerous military bases to discuss mental health and other issues, it's misleading at best and really just false to refer to a military career or to claim that he did anything in the military. And the outfit he worked for, extremely problematic among the ranks of those who served in the US military because they did not provide the service they proclaimed. Herschel Walker was exactly who he is today for them, a paid spokesperson, nothing more. All right, when Rolling Out posed a question to Walker about his false 2019 insinuation that he had been an FBI agent, Walker said, and I quote, "I'm so glad you brought that up, because if you look at the tape, when I talk about the FBI, you can clearly see I was joking, but I have trained with the FBI." That was his exact answer to Rolling Out magazine. Here are the facts. It's possible that some listener might have thought Walker was joking. That is possible that somebody said, you know what, this has to be a joke, when he strongly suggested he had been an FBI agent. But Walker did not make that unambiguous. And in June 2022, when the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported about that comment, him being in the FBI, it was a serious claim. Walker's campaign did not tell the newspaper that he was simply making a joke. Also, when Walker told the same story in a 2017 speech, he claimed to have, and I quote, FBI clearance. That's what he said. There's more. When the Atlanta Journal-Constitution wrote in June about Walker's comment about having been an agent, the Walker campaign pointed the newspaper to a 1989 article in which Walker said he spent a week at FBI Training Academy in Quantico at the tail end of his football career, a claim the FBI has decided not to comment on. Walker has never in his life had a job in law enforcement. He has publicized a card showing that he was at some point after 2004 named an honorary agent and special agent or special deputy of the Cobb County, Georgia Sheriff's Office. The titles that do not confer arrest authority. And here's something else he did. Remember that infamous debate where he pulled out a badge? Well, I actually did some research on that badge. He pulled out a badge from a county that was not even in question. So he got some sheriff in the state of Georgia to give him a badge right before the debate so that he can use a prop and say that he is still the police. Listen, the badge is legitimate as the Fisher-Price badge when it comes to policing. That's it. It's fake, it's false. But what's the real issue here? The real issue is that Walker is a man who lacks identity. You have an individual who was at the top of his game for football, world renowned, honored, praised, respected by groups all across the planet. That wasn't enough for him. He had to lie and say he graduated valedictorian from his high school. He had to lie and say he finished his undergrad degree at the University of Georgia. He had to lie and say that he was pro-life when the fact is he was simply pro-lying. Nothing more. You're dealing with an individual who doesn't know who the hell he is. You see, Senator Warnock at least believes in something. The individuals who are voting for Herschel Walker, they don't believe in Herschel. They believe he will sit his ass down and do exactly what he's told. Nothing else. All right, Rickey, thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a big problem. I ran into Herschel Walker at the grocery store, at Tom Thumb grocery store in the cereal aisle in Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
And so I'm a living witness to know that he was living there. He lived not far from me. I would often run into him.
Amazing.
In the grocery store, and he definitely have integrity issues and issues with telling, with telling the truth. And back to your point, he definitely should be investigated, because had that been me or you, we were under investigation right now and probably in jail.
Yep.
So I'm just embarrassed. I was embarrassed when I saw him sitting in between Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham, as if he could not articulate or whatever. And the reason they're probably keeping the press from him, because when they're afraid that if the press ask him who he's going to vote for, he's definitely going to say Raphael Warnock.
That would take the cake. But listen, man. Listen, I don't put it past the guy to do that. All right. Okay. Obviously, the election is today. Those in Georgia, make sure you vote.